This brand new RTS surprised me. Today I'm gonna show you a modern take on a retro-styled real-time strategy game that's releasing into early access, but I was not expecting it to be this solid. We were sponsored today by Microprose to take command of a faction in this game, and the developers jumped into a multiplayer match to not only show how gameplay worked, but to also talk about the development and the future of Battlefall State of Conflict. Click the link below to check it out on Steam, and I really do think this one is worth a look. There are a couple of indie devs who really do seem to care about making a game the best they can, and you'll see some details today that shows that. Also to note, this is the start of early access and we're playing across the world here, with us being in the UK and Australia, with no desyncs and solid performance. And the game isn't just multiplayer, there's single-player voice-acted campaigns with stories, and you can also play the campaigns in co-op with a friend, where you might find it's a different experience altogether. In today's gaming landscape that's starved of RTS, it's encouraging to see passionate developers who are giving their all, and the fact that you can see that here is nice. Anyway, I'm gonna jump into a 1v1 with a developer with the other dev on the line, and let me show you the game along with thoughts and insights straight from the ones making it. Alright, so here we are in the game, and we're here speaking to the developers of the game. So, would you introduce yourselves just so we know who we're talking to today?
Absolutely. My name is Lelouch, and I am the lead developer of this game and lead developer of Kyoto Video Game Concern.
I'm 10X. I'm the designer-artist for Kyoto Video Game Concern and for Battlefall. Start to finish, all the art, except for the vehicles, which you're going to be seeing a lot of.
Alright, so this is a brand new RTS, and there might be some similarities or familiarities that people would see in general, but also there are some new things and new approaches, particularly with the visuals as well, which I've been noticing. So, just as a brief overview, how would you describe this game?
I would say a completely chaotic RTS in the old style and the classic style. Golden age of RTS, heavily inspired by all the stuff that we loved, but we're trying to bring it to people in a way that inspires them the way that we felt it when we played those games the first time. You know, we've made all kinds of little improvements, little quality of life improvements here and there, and lots of modern improvements to the way that the games work. And it's a lot faster.
How would you say is, like, what would your main inspirations be? So you mentioned, like, classic, retro, well, maybe not retro, but older school RTS. So there might be some obvious inspirations, but just to confirm, which would be your main ones?
Aesthetically, that would have to come from Command & Conquer Tiberian Sun. That's where the aesthetic inspiration came from. Gameplay-wise, heavily inspired by Red Alert 2, which, you know, a lot of people have pointed out so far by kind of figuring it out on their own, and they're 100% correct.
So I wanted to note on the visuals, since we do have the visual designer here. I noticed, like, it's got this retro aesthetic, which, personally, those who know me know I love this kind of thing. It's like this pixel art, but not quite neo-pixel kind of thing. And also there's a lot of modern effects, particularly with like lens flares and stuff like that, which, by the way, I think are toggleable in the options for those who don't like it, but I kind of really like it. So why'd you go for the pixel art aesthetic, but then have these modern visual flares?
The first problem with any RTS is designing the basics of what it's going to look like against how it functions. These games really function, even when they hide it, they function on a tile set. Somewhere deep underneath there's a grid, an isometric grid or some kind of grid. And the pathfinding works on the grid. Everything in the game is rectilinear, basically, right? And we decided if the units are going to move that way, we're going to show the game that way rather than try and hide it. Most of the games try and hide it to make everything look smooth. We're not going to do that. We're gonna leave it a little bit rustic. It's openly tile-based, let's say. And so the art roughly represents that, both in the shapes that it's going to take, because the buildings, for example, take the general shape of the tiles of the game, but also the individual pixels. It's almost voxel style. Is roughly what people should take away from it. But then at the end of that, you really need to give people a sense that you've done something more and you've brought the art forward from the era of when people started to love these games in the early days. And so we've got a CRT shader that's performing a couple of functions. It's improving the art, it's improving the saturation. We prefer it generally. It also softens the image slightly. Really just brings the game into the modern feel, but still giving people the underlayer that it's hand created. I think 3D model games can start to feel sort of like CGI in movies. It's not a criticism of people who are using it. We love that stuff too. But when you see something that's very different, it's not pixel art, it's not CGI, and we've got that modern filter over it, I don't know, I think it sells pretty well. I think it's pretty compelling.
Yeah, that's actually a good point on how if something looks just maybe good, but like generically 3D, it can feel a little bit not hand-created, whereas the pixel art or the voxel style, as you say, can feel a lot more personalized. And I think that's actually a way of putting it that I haven't really put it before, because a lot of people ask, you know, obviously, oh, it's 2025, why are we using pixel art? And then, of course, other people coming in are saying, I love pixel art, you know, because a lot of people do love it. And these two groups tend to not realize each other exists. Mm-hmm. Like those who love pixel art, they're like, of course we love pixel art. You know, why wouldn't we love pixel art?
There's a medium period.
Oh yeah, so, like I've been recently saying there's this middle ground, which I've been calling middle poly. So you know how there's low poly. I've been calling it middle poly, which is which you see in like Valheim or the System Shock remake, where it's kind of the early 2000s kind of aesthetic, like Half-Life 1 kind of aesthetic, where it's 3D but low res, but you do it on purpose these days, and there's not really a good word for that right now.
Middle poly is probably a good way to put it.
Yeah, I've been calling it middle poly, so because it's not low poly, but it's not high res.
In the case of ours, these are hand painted. They are not, say, a lot of what people think about pixel art is a memory. There's a middle way between the early palletized art that was used in, say, Mario Brothers. It's very, very few individual pixels. It's almost ANSI art, and if anybody who's listening knows what that is. Very, very simple stuff. When we get to something like Genesis, Sega Genesis, Super Nintendo, most of that stuff is either hand-drawn, as in they're full quality drawings that are being made. They're not being drawn pixel by pixel. They're just being digitized at a low rate. So some artist somewhere was making incredibly high detail images, high resolution images, and they were coming out pixelized from the digitization because of memory limitations and other stuff on the old systems. So we're using a much worse system, which is we're directly painting everything pixel by pixel by pixel. And that's the digital image. It's a much worse system, but it's really the only way for us to do it in an isometric projection. What you said about when you were agreeing with me, at least tacitly, about how sometimes 3D models don't feel personalized, it's absolutely true that people feel that way. It's horrible because the artists who are making those things are doing the same backbreaking labor that pixel artists are doing. They're crafting every little thing bit by bit. In some cases, at incredible levels of intricacy. It's just that it's been the most common thing for some time now. And so I think people wrongly perceive it that way. We do use 3D models in the production of the vehicles for our game. All the vehicles in the game are made by Lelouch. The art for them is made by him. You'll see that they are a different art style from the rest of the game. Fundamentally, they look like a different material. That's because they are. In the conception of the game world, all of the vehicles that people use ultimately are being sent by a 3D production platform, which has survived in space despite this apocalypse on the planet. And the game's interface, both through the Battlefall upgrade system and through calling down vehicles, the vehicle production, the warpad is really just a landing pad. and these 3D printed vehicles are crashing down from space in rocket crates. And so we've integrated that stuff too. We certainly are using 3D models in the production of those. You'll see that the turning rates of those things are very, very smooth, and that's because we're able to take high-resolution images of the projection. So we use them too. It's not a knock against 3D models. They're a great tool, and in our case, it helped us differentiate the two layers of the game world: stuff that comes from the satellite and stuff that doesn't. All the stuff that comes up out of the ground is, in the case of FNet, the FNet, the humans are living underground. They're surviving this apocalypse. They've got these networks of tunnels and of tunneling vehicles that can produce stuff onto the surface. Anything that comes up is made by hand and from scavenged old technology, and it looks like pixel art. Anything that comes down from the high technology satellite, from the 3D printer, is 3D rendered.
Right. So yeah, I think that's pretty much the middle poly aesthetic I'm talking about. Yes, which, just to clarify again, I do love.
Well, thank God for that.
So that's why when I first saw this game and I was like looking at the trailer, I was like, oh yeah, this is my kind of vibe. Because I did grow up with Command and Conquer and the older school RTSs, so I do have that sort of aesthetic sense in me. You know, gaming through the 90s, everything sort of looked like that. But also, if you go back and play the games actually from the 90s, they don't really look that great anymore. So these touches of modernization is really nice, but it's keeping that older aesthetic, so it still vibes the same way. And that's what I like.
We really wanted to blend the two in the gameplay, in the UI. You know, we have very similar general sidebar UI, except we have 4 build queues, one for each general type.
Right.
Rather than different pages that you have to flip through or scrollable, although we've experimented with scrollable sidebars for building when we have too many units. The functionality is there if we need it in the future, or when modders eventually start to produce extra stuff and have massive unit lists and other things. The functionality is present, but for our purposes, we just wanted everything to be a little bit easier than we remember it, and a little bit faster, and obviously we're taking some liberties with the direct pixel or voxel art style being blended with the 3D models, but it's actually really important for explaining the story to have them be totally different like that.
So yeah, I was looking at the build queues, well, the build options on the right. I didn't immediately recognize that it was 4 different build queues, but yes, it is working like that. I've unlocked all these vehicles now, and there's many things I want to get. So does building...
Yeah.
So quick question on mechanics. Does building a second building of the same type speed up the construction of things?
Yes.
It does. Okay. I should probably be putting down more war pads.
It does, and you can build a second one and also get... there's a diminishing return. So there's a minimum production time for everything by using that normal system. There are mods which change the way that your whole lobby will work when you're playing skirmish or you're playing online. But without mods, yeah, the normal function would be a second warpad will increase it. I think it's 30% at the moment in early access,
right?
And the second one is a little bit more. And that works. That works for the camp as well, which is the infantry build queue building.
Right. And good that you mentioned early access. This game is going into early access. So is there anything specific you want people to look for or check out while it's in early access?
Early access, especially for our first 3 to 4 months, the big stuff we're looking for is scaled gameplay and feedback from people who are doing it. You know, we have a large QA team that we work with that's done lots of work. They've done lots of big games, and everybody's hammered the game, and it's very stable. But what we want is people who are putting skin in the game, people who want to play these games, people who are buying our early access product. Give us the feedback. That helps us make it exactly the way that you want. At least as generally as we can do that. You know, we can't make 40,000 different games for 40,000 people, but we'll do our best to synthesize what people are really trying to get out of the product. We've taken it this far after, I hesitate to tell you how many hours of work. But there's only so far that a developer can take a game like this, especially with all of the things we have planned for editors and custom content creation, which has been planned from the start. We really need the feedback from players in early access. Control groups are something I think I would like to touch on right away, because we have seen other reviewers are playing it, and some of them are not noticing that we have control groups. It is in the tutorial. It's brief, so if they're playing it, they could probably have missed it. I don't know about you, but the first thing I do when I get into an RTS and I see a few units is I grab them in a box, which Command & Conquer gave us the selection box, I think was the first game. Thank God for that. I grab them with a selection box and I hit Control 1 to see if I can do it. Because personally, I cannot micro hundreds of units without control groups. So I think we have 10 available, and total control groups 1 through 0, essentially 1 through 9 plus 0.
Oh yeah, just checking now.
Can use
1 through 0.
And the health bar for each of those control groups is right attached to the minimap. They're there all the time. They will show up when they're selected, and you'll have an aggregate health bar that adjusts as the units take damage, or you add more units to the control group.
Oh yeah, so there it is, up there, right next to the minimap. So you can see which one of your control groups are about to die.
Yes. Yeah. I would love to be able to flash the screen and put a big arrow that says your units are dying right now. Not for other players, but for me. I'm really bad at managing that stuff personally.
Yep.
The control group aggregate health bar is a big deal for me. But they're there, and we have 9 plus the extra one. If your hands are big enough to reach the Control 0 without coming off the mouse, send us a
coming
video.
Off the mouse. We're talking right-handed here, right?
Right hand on the mouse, left hand on the keyboard. If you can hit Control 0, I think I can do it with my pinky and thumb.
Yeah, just about.
If anyone else can do it, yeah. If anyone who's listening can do it, send us a video, and we'll put it up somewhere. But 1 through 9 should be achievable for most people.
Yeah, I think most people are sticking 1 through 5 anyway. Beyond that, I think most people will start to get a bit lost past 1 to 5.
Well, how do you use control groups normally when you're playing? What's your first thing?
Oh, so yeah, the first thing I do check for, which is whether control groups exist, of course, because that's not always a given these days.
No.
So I do check whether control groups exist. And then the second thing I check is whether control group, or can units exist within the same control group. So this is something that I think is not quite in this game right now, where I tend to put, like, for example, I select my whole army, put it on control group 1, and then I like to select all of the artillery, put them on control group 2, but then I still want to control the artillery when it's on 1. I just like to send 1 all the way forward and then pull 2 a little bit back. So I like to do that.
A superset control group.
Yes. So this is something that actually isn't all that common in RTS, because I think it's not, like, maybe not many people play like that. Maybe it's just me, but and a few people I know, but I like to do that because there's the whole idea of, 1A, where you just select your whole army and just tell them to go. But then sometimes you have, whether your support units or the artillery or medics or something, you don't want them going all the way forward with the rest of your army. But then you can't micro them separately, so I like to have units exist in multiple control groups.
We hadn't actually considered superset control groups. We'll have to put that on the maybe list and see what we can do about it. It's an interesting way of going about it. I wonder how many people have totally different ways of using control groups in RTSs. There's got to be. In my case, I basically treat the map like lanes in a MOBA. In my mind, I'll make little unit armies cluster, usually based on how fast they move, because I don't like units to lag behind in the pathfinding when they're going from one place to another. And so I'll make 4 or 5, and I'll sort of make lanes 1, 2, and 3 in my mind, based on where my base is and where I'm heading. So if I'm going to be on the left, for me, that's 1. If I'm on the right, that's 3. and I just sort of organize the map in my head using the control groups that way. I tend to make very small ones, and over and over again replenish them as they die, and then put them out in the same way. Managing big armies is that's my biggest weakness.
Yeah.
If you watch Lush play long enough, I don't know how good you are at RTSs and macro scale RTSs, but I'm always amazed by how many things he can control and successfully win. I feel like a fool sometimes when we play against each other. It's incredibly intense.
Yeah, I feel like I'm okay. Like maybe skill-wise 6 out of 10 in the grand scheme of things, like very slightly above average is where I'd comfortably say I am. But of course, like, you know, with a brand new game, I tend to not do too well because I don't know what half the units do. Like, I'm just really starting to enjoy these really long artillery units here that's currently attacking me. So I wasn't, like, before we started recording today, I wasn't too sure the full list of units that were available in this game. So I saw there were vehicles and infantry, and that was pretty much what I had in mind. So I wasn't sure whether there were, like, artillery, long-range artillery, and I've just started unlocking all this stuff. I'm seeing there's this Gattle tank, anti-air, because right at the start of the game, I was setting up my base here, and then I saw a helicopter fly by, and I was like, does anything shoot up? What shoots up? So it's like, if I was just rushed by like 3 helicopters at the start, I would have insta-lost. But it's because I didn't even really know helicopters were a choice.
They are. We've got currently one air unit for each of the 2 factions for early access. It's enough to have 1 unit on the other plane. They can move over the terrain, and they can traverse quite a bit of terrain. We have maps in the campaign that have pretty high cliffs compared to what you would normally see in a skirmish map, and they can traverse that with ease. And rain down hellfire. They also get upgrades that change their weapons. It's something that we've got built into the game. We have a veterancy system. So as units engage in combat and survive, they will start to gain new abilities. They'll gain a little medal above their head. Each one will gain a little. The first one is a triangle. There's 2 levels of veterancy. The first one will be a little triangle, and over their head a little gold medal. They'll gain some increase to their health or speed. Or rate of fire. That's usually what they get. In the case of the helicopters, I think we add a brand new weapon right away. And then there's a second layer of veterancy where the little medal gains wings. It looks like a little bit of military chest candy. You'll see it underneath on the unit UI for each unit. Usually at that point, they gain something significant, either a good amount of health or a new weapon. And in the case of the helicopters, they gain plasma guns that rain down these giant blobs of blue glowing plasma.
Oh, so speaking of the unit modifiers, there are these abilities, these special abilities, which you acquire from experience, I think is what it's called in this game.
Yeah.
Yeah, so when your units fight each other, you gain points, and then you can spend them on these special abilities. Some of them are just like increase maximum HP, heals them to full, but to note, these you can only use it once per unit, as far as I understand. So they don't get super, super powerful. But then, as I think, if anyone was watching just now, I was being para-dropped from the back, which I'm just going to try now as well. There's this para-drop ability, which allows you to just drop some infantry down onto the back line. I don't think there's any location limits for this kind of thing.
There aren't.
Yeah, so you can't just drop them down. So you can't just dump all of your defenses on the front line. But also,
It's a great way to bend through the defenses as well. Sorry, I bend through the upgrades.
I
did it wrong.
Oh yeah, you can drop the infantry and then upgrade them. Right, okay. Make them super infantry. Let's do that.
You can indeed.
But also, I noticed just now, just a nice little point. As the infantry was dropping, my helicopters were shooting them mid-air while they were dropping, which was really nice to see.
They are vulnerable while they are dropping, and there is one more thing that can happen to them. I would just say try airdropping some or paradropping some units directly onto a helicopter and see what happens.
Does it work on friendly helicopters?
Yep, it does. Works on
Okay,
any
hold on.
helicopter.
I'm pulling a helicopter back.
Let me pull this back.
Yeah, hold on. Let's see if I can aim it right.
At your service, Commander.
It does indeed work. Okay. So there's something in games where I don't know if there's a proper term for it, but I call it unnecessary design. And it's probably my favorite thing. And it's things that like are just put in by developers who like they just say, you know what would be fun? Let's put this in. And if it wasn't in the game, it wouldn't really change much. Right? It wouldn't really make or break the game. Like if it wasn't in there, it wouldn't change review scores or anything like that. But you find it in the game and it's like, oh, that's in the game. And then it just gives you that just tiny little bit of joy that that's there.
We as the developers can't live without doing things like that. And I think when you see those things, you get the sense that the developers are enjoying making the game and playing the game. We're making it because we love games, and we love these games, and we have the same crazy ideas that everybody else does. The difference is we're currently making this one. You know, you play other people's games, and you think exactly what you said about unnecessary design. You wish, how come that didn't happen? Like, I expected something else a little bit more. I wish something reacted to something. You know, something that Valve pioneered really when they were doing Half-Life, which is the general reactivity. If you shoot something, it should move or make a sound. If it doesn't, it's disorienting. So in this case, yeah, we're going to be dropping guys from the sky as part of the game regularly. They should definitely interact with the helicopter in a comical way, and so they get chewed up.
Yeah,
gruesomely chewed into blood dust.
Yeah,
There's a few more instances where this works as well. There's one specifically, regrettably, we'll have to exclude from the early access first launch release. But we had another, you can see on the actual Battlefall upgrade list, there's room for a bit more. So we intend to bring this back. The landmine drop update, the landmine upgrade you can deploy on the battlefield. Or at the same plane, but it'll deploy landmines onto the battlefield instead of troops. And of course, if enemy tanks or infantry go over them, they explode and die. There was an intricacy that I had for that as well, where if you happen to do a landmine drop over the battlefield, and that landmine lands perfectly on top of a tank, instead of exploding, the landmine will attach to the tank, and then you can just send that tank into the enemy base, and it's a bomber essentially.
Yes, I like that.
Little interesting.
Yeah. The ability to drop the mines and attach them to things and drive them into stuff and have them explode. Yeah, it's the things that you want to do when you're playing someone else's game, and you think, why can't I do that? How come someone didn't think of that? Is usually what I think. We've tried our best to think of those things and then make as many small, insane additions as we can.
Yeah. So that's one that we'll obviously bring back. We removed it because of balancing issues, at least from what we could see. But we'll address that one as soon as possible and bring that back because it's too fun not to include.
Yeah, there's always those things where, this is super fun, but then it throws off the balance. And that's like, I think why most games don't have the silly fun things, but then having a perfectly balanced game that's boring isn't gonna help anyone, right?
Yeah, a game whose rules never change or has no chaos to it also gets very boring very fast. You want the player to feel the same thing you would want as a player, which is you want to feel like you're gaining mastery over the mechanics of the game. But if you have total mastery, there's not much left. There's nothing left to learn. There's no novelty left. Having those little chaotic moments actually really improves it. True randomness, in a sense, improves, I think, the player's sense of enjoyment. Once they've played the game a bunch, new things can still happen.
Yeah, that unexpectedness, like it's really part of like the longevity of a lot of games where You know, you don't want your game to be a solved game. So for those who watch
precisely that.
my channel regularly, I play a lot of Caesar 3, you know, the city builder from 1998. And it's the kind of game where you could play it for 10 years and still be like, wait, what's that thing? I never seen that before. And there's just like a tiny little detail that you've never noticed was there the whole time. But it's like, oh, wait, there's still more being discovered like a decade after release. And that really does give the sense that there's always more to see, more to find, more to discover, and then you feel like it's more worthwhile getting back into the game because you might find something new. And it's like when they say, when like Bethesda says something about Skyrim, oh, there's still a secret no one has found, and it's like, what? Where? And then everyone starts jumping back in to try and find that secret. And
Skyrim really seems like it's become a part of the universe itself because it's completely infinite, apparently.
Yeah.
The game never stops and there's always something new to find. You just keep dividing it and dividing it. Like the universe itself, there's absolute infinity contained inside that game. It's incredible. What's the longevity? Is it 13 years? 12 years?
2011, I think it was. So yeah, approaching 14 years.
It's absolutely incredible. Yeah, I can only hope that people continue to find that stuff. After we're finished our full launch, after we're finished, which is the plan is for about a year of early access at the moment. Not promising it's only going to be a year. Really depends on how much feedback we get, and really the vibrancy of the online community. Everything as it is now is we've developed a full campaign. Everything is voiced over. Everything is written. There's some story missions. There's some wave missions. It's you've got the first third of the game is already in early access. It's present now, and you can play it all the way through, and you can play it all the way through in co-op. Separately from the fact that you can do all the online and offline any way you want. We haven't talked about game modifiers yet. You know, there's a million things that are ready to go already for early access, but there's a lot more coming afterward. And while we have our own plans for how it will be developed, we also plan on allowing those things to change a bit as we work with the community. Try and be as responsive as we would want people to be when we were playing their games. You know, it's a different era than being a developer who's a monolith. You release a game, it goes out on a CD, it gets a patch once a year because data is very expensive. It comes over a modem, like a 56K modem, and it feels monolithic, and you sort of feel like you can't talk to the developers. It wasn't that they didn't want to talk to you; it was that there was a consequence of the communications limits of the time. We're talking about the 1990s. That's a totally different era now, and we're around a lot more than we probably should be, working and playing. Not just working on the game, but playing the game ourselves. And we can't wait. We're extraordinarily excited. I can't tell you what a relief it is to actually launch the game finally. We really get to know what people think about it finally. We can only shepherd it so far. We're there now. Now it's everybody else's turn to tell us what they think. And for us to show everybody what we've done. We're kind of overjoyed, actually.
Yeah, I mean, like,
Just FYI.
Oh, yeah.
You have more than enough stuff to come kill me. You have for a while.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm not like super zoomed in. I'm not locked in on the gameplay right now.
Neither am I.
Like I am also still like familiarizing myself with things like the UI and all of that. But yeah, like just playing the game now, it feels like it's like this is fully playable, right? There's campaigns, and also with co-op modes. I think co-op mode is like something everyone not everyone wants, but no one would object to a co-op mode being there, and then a lot of people do want co-op modes, and it's a great way to. For a long time, RTSs were
exactly
a very solo, lonely experience. You know, the best you could do with co-op is maybe a 2v2 or a 3v3 in multiplayer, but like actual co-op gameplay in RTS, I think it is a refreshing change, and it's nice to have in pretty much every RTS.
It's not the kind of thing you see anymore, and it's not for everyone, and I totally agree on that. But for at least some of the people who, you know, it's not for, they would appreciate that it is there. And it's like, well, you know, if my mind changes on the track, at least I can invite a friend along to the lobby and give it a go. But for the time being, I'm just going to play it single player. So yeah, it's the same. It is the exact same campaign, but it's been built to be compatible with a friend or not.
Right, so you
Really,
can play through the story with a friend, like fully.
yes, completely without interruption. From what we have is 9 full campaign missions. This is, it's separate from the tutorial or anything like that. There's 9 straight campaign missions. It's the FNet campaign as it stands now for early access is 9 missions long. Varied gameplay, different kinds of missions. They're not skirmish maps dressed up as campaign missions. They're fully written, scripted, acted with voice actors. There's some significant, I would say, story development sections. And it all follows the real story of the game as we're telling it. We can't tell everybody everything that's going to happen. We try to tell them the backstory. We have a prologue that plays, fully acted prologue, which gives a bit of the backstory, a hint of the backstory of the world, a little more dramatically than the Steam Store page description does.
To be clear, if you play the game or if you play the campaign cooperatively, it is harder. There's certain triggers or there's certain things that happen on the campaign maps. If you play them cooperatively, that only happen cooperatively. Typically, the enemy just throws more forces at you. But there can be a few more triggers here or there.
Oh, okay.
Some more of those emergent gameplay surprises.
So that's good to know, because then
it's not like if I invite a friend along, it's going to be twice as easy or something like that. It'll be twice as fun, but hopefully, I think really overall, because we've played it back to front constantly, it definitely lightens the difficulty a touch. But yeah, the fun factor of that more outweighs it.
Playing with your friends is in a campaign is not for everybody. But I personally, as a gamer, I feel that the developers are producing something of significant value when they go out of their way to do something that I know is difficult. It isn't easy to produce a game like this with the kind of networking system that one has to use, and then do campaign missions with all of their scripts and triggers and everything, and make it all work seamlessly in co-op. It's not easy. Not patting ourselves on the back, but just saying that when I see it in games, even if I don't want to play it, I understand that they've done something. In my opinion, they've done something sort of exceptional. And we did it because we really like playing that kind of stuff. So for the people who want it, there it is. You can play it front to back in co-op from start to finish without escaping, without restarting, without going and starting a new server or anything like that. It just plays together from start to finish.
And as Tenek said, putting in the effort to do these things, this is mainly the predominant reason why we localize the game into many languages as well. With the help of Microprose, they were fantastic in getting that arranged with us. But yeah, games fully localized. We're both only English speakers, but we want to show people of non-English speaking languages that we're there for them, and we're there to provide a workable and localized game for those people.
We've got English, German, Spanish, Russian, Korean, and simplified Chinese at the moment. We are open to localizing further as we go along and we build up in early access. We know that Portuguese and Portuguese Brazilian, Portuguese specifically, is probably something we should look at. We're looking at Polish, maybe French, and if anybody who's watching the video, or if you have friends who are from those countries, we're probably going to run a poll after we launch EA. If you don't want to make your own post on the forum or come to Discord and tell us, we'll try and run a poll on the socials in a little while to see what the favorability is for new languages to localize. It's a lot of work. Localization is a big thing. It takes a lot of people a lot of time. We're very fortunate in that we're published by Microprose. Microprose has fantastic people, like Lush said, with a great QA team and a tremendous localization team. And we're open to doing it further. We want to service more communities, especially the ones who really only want to see things, or really only can see things in their own script. can be very challenging to play games. I know from trying to play Japanese arcade games, I can't read Japanese, that it can be very frustrating. But if you really like the game, you'll try. But we don't want to make it hard. We want to make it easy. So we will try to open up a few new localizations as we build the community. We'll see where the interest is.
Oh, that sounds good. And also, you did earlier mention that there's voice acting through the campaigns. I did notice quite a bit of voice acting is going through the campaigns. Right now, it is just in English, I'm thinking.
The plan for voiceovers is to remain in English. The writing for the game, the dramatic writing for the game, which is the campaign mission, is written primarily in English, and then the localization teams translate the text. They're localizing it. It is not transliteration. The localization team has done their best to work with us to develop the feeling of the writing in the non-English languages. Obviously, I'm not an expert in what Spanish people understand when I say things in English and transliterate it into Spanish. We need people to work on that. That's what our localization team really focused on. It's getting the feeling that we're trying to convey into the text for the other languages. As far as acting it goes, we don't currently have plans to change the voiceovers into localized voiceovers, partially because we have no way of directing those people to read them properly.
Yeah, that makes sense. But localizing the text already is way better than just translating it.
They've done, I think, a very good job. If people look through the credits of the game once they're finished, they'll see there's quite a lot of people working on localization. Quite a lot.
Yeah, because myself coming from Asia, I've seen a lot of weird translations.
I know. We were guilty of that before when we were in our demo phase. It's very difficult. You want people from other communities to be able to, especially from other languages that have different scripts that are they're mutually unintelligible with Roman style scripts. Can't make sense of it, and then you throw it through Google Translate, and then you throw it through DeepL Translate. Then you ask somebody who speaks those languages, and then try and get them to help. And that's really what we did in the early stages before we were published.
Oh, yeah.
I wouldn't recommend it to anybody. Neither reading the localized text that we did, nor trying to do it if you don't speak those languages. I think I have permanent brain damage from trying to localize into 6 different languages.
Yeah, that would be a challenge.
Yeah, this is one of the things we learn. And as soon as Microplayers offered to do, or at least do the localization for it, we're just like, yep,
great.
Do it. Yep. I don't even want to think about that.
No,
I mean, I will, but
it's like carrying 1,000 pounds of bricks on your back, and somebody comes by with a truck and says, "Hey, do you want to throw that on the back over here?" Yeah, I do. Thanks. Thank you. We did all the work for it. Yeah, go ahead.
End of the day, it's 100% worth it. What we did.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that's also the case of the original work that we did when we tried doing it ourselves. It was worth it.
Okay.
We had a good response from a lot of different languages. We've had a very good response from German RTS gamers. And that really just sells the idea of why real localization is so important.
Okay, so I think that does really sum up the game very well. I'm gonna try win here, but I'm thinking you've gone easy on me.
You'll never win.
So
I tried to do a few sneaky things on you, but it just did not work because you had that barrier of units that just encompassed it's the map as well, because every player is kind of in a corner, so makes it a bit difficult. But no, you done really well. I did go a little bit easy at the beginning, but not at the end.
Well, it's the clump of units. It's not exactly strategy on my side. It's just macro over micro.
Finely grained micro strategy can come later as you get familiar with the game. Just looking at this map, speaking of effort, it's really great to watch it come out for early access and watch people just play it and everything just works. Lucius put a pretty unbelievable amount of effort. He's programmed every single thing in there. He wrote the code for. everything.
This has been a pretty solid experience. I mean, this is multiplayer, like before early access is even out. So by the time anyone's watching this, early access is out. You can go check out the game, and like this was multiplayer, which is not always the most stable of experiences. With all these units going on, there were no desyncs. Like everything. I'm not really experienced with netcode programming, but as a user, this went very smoothly.
Excellent.
For anyone watching who wants to make networking for an RTS game, consider it a few times over. This was a pain to make. The networking part of it, desyncs and stability. You know, there's been a bit of lag in the game, obviously, as we can see, but you're many, many miles away from me. So, but it did work out, and it played out at the end. But lockstep synchronization is what a lot of RTS games use for their netcode and networking. It's a pain to do, but if you can do it right, and if you can do it well, it pays off, as you can see.
Yeah, and just to note, this isn't region locked either. I'm currently in the UK. Lelouch is in Australia, if I'm correct.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what the game looked like. This was across the world multiplayer, and it's working.
It is a 10,000 mile distance. There's 10,000 miles between you two, and it was performant, and nobody noticed any real lag.
So good job
We're
there.
very, very proud of that. Thank you. Yeah, we're very proud of the results. Lelouch did an unbelievable job. I don't know, should we ever encounter a desync, it will warn you rather than let the game go on and have the players exist in different dimensions, slowly drifting off.
I've played like that before. Yes.
Yeah, our game won't do that. You'll get it there are none that we know of, and it's been thoroughly QA'd by a very large QA team, as well as picked over by us for thousands of hours, and there are none that we know of. But it will throw an error that tells you will not exist in a separate reality from everyone else and not know. We also don't like that.
It will not let you. If you do happen to get a desync, let us know about it through our socials and our channels, because we'd love to know how that happened. And it will spit out a couple of log files on each machine there. So if you're going to get a desync log prepared for us to have a look at, make sure it's with a friend. So you can
ideally we'd get both log files. Join the Discord. Send us the log files. Come and say hi. Send us the desync. Talk to us about what's happening. We haven't found any, and neither has the QA team. But if you find one, we would like to know for sure. That'd be very helpful.
Okay. So, any final words just to wrap this up? Like any last messages to people who want to jump into the early access or anything like that? What you want to hear from them, what you're hoping for, all that good stuff.
I'll go first. We read everything, or as much as we can, that comes our way. Feedback is absolutely fundamentally critical to us. What you say shapes where the game goes and what it becomes. So if you've got an opinion, if you've got feedback, the good and the bad or the middle, it doesn't matter where it is, where it lies, let us know what you thought, what you think. We love to hear from our players.
Yeah, critically important to hear it. We're only two people. Is exactly two people have made the game. One person made almost all of the art except for the vehicles and designed the better part. And the other person designed almost the exact same amount of the game and did all of the code, and we're doing everything else. So it's critical that you as a player tell us what you think. We can't monitor reams of data, and we don't want to try and read your minds. We'd rather you just tell us, and tell us plainly. You can tell us nicely, but tell us plainly.
Nicely but plainly. That's the message.
yeah, that's right. Yeah. Feedback is still feedback. If you're going to be, let's say, if you're going to be very grumpy, we're still going to figure out what you mean through the grumpiness and try and help you. But nicer would be better. But that's not just about the feedback about the game, the state that it's in. We'd like to hear about where you'd like it to go. We have a roadmap, which we'll be publishing when we go live for EA. It's a perspective roadmap. It's not the gospel, but it can also be changed in part by the players. So we'd like to hear that as well. We can't hear enough. We've heard enough of ourselves talking to each other for years working on the game. We'd like to hear other people now.
Okay, well, that should be good. If anyone watching this video has any questions for me, you can leave them in the comments. If you have questions for the developers, they have a Discord. And thank you so much for watching. Hopefully we see this continue to progress, but I can definitely say that it's pretty solid for the start of early access. So thank you so much to the developers for joining us today, and I hope you enjoyed this view of a new RTS in 2025.
Thank you.
Battlefall State of Conflict is out now in early access on Steam. Look it up, you can join the devs Discord, and if you like what you're seeing, get the game and join them on a new RTS journey. The devs genuinely can't wait for you to try the game and hear what you think. Thank you for clicking the link down below, and also thank you to Microprose for sponsoring today.